Welcome back. I'm Jared. You landed on the Bonsai Echo channel here on YouTube. Today I'm going to be working on this dogwood that was collected from a nursery last year and starting to grow some leaves pretty well, and it's just got a whole lot of sprouts that are showing up all over the place. It's got a nice thick trunk, but really not a whole lot of action going on top that really speaks to tree to me. I had just put it in this new pot. It's a little bit wiggly, so I'm actually going to secure it a little bit better because I'm getting ready to do a little wiring, and I don't want this really moving around and breaking off of those new roots. So first step I'm going to do is grab a couple of bamboo pieces. I'm going to make some holes in the sides of this plastic pot and shove the bamboo into the pot to hold down the roots. And that is actually a super secure way of holding a tree like this in place that hasn't really securely rooted yet. After that, I'll get to wiring. Alright, let's see what I need to do with this. Just clean it up some, get rid of some of the dead stuff that's in there, spread out these branches a little bit, select ones that I want to trim back and ones that I want to allow to extend. Usually this is pretty easy work. Some of these thickest ones that I had hoped to grow onto other things are not doing too well. So what this tree is doing is almost like making suckers from having a damaged top. Where this one was growing in the nursery, the top had broken off and also had tried to regrow from up higher and just wasn't really doing that well. So instead it started pushing a lot of this growth downwards. And when I took it out, I got rid of most of the dead parts on top. Now I need to figure out what I want to highlight. Most of these thicker branches are going very strongly upwards. And I'm actually okay with using those as opposed to using a lot of these shorter ones. Thinner ones. So most of these thinner ones are just going to get cut off. Either cut off or my preferred way of pruning, which is actually just pulling. And this is going to create a very knobby trunk because there's so many places where it's going to create new callus tissues. I am not going to try to cut paste this and make it super smooth, because that really wouldn't be in keeping with any of this base down here. So some of these branches I think are going to be kind of small for it, but at the same time I don't see a lot of these thicker ones being used long term as they are. In fact, this thickest one in the middle, it looks like I'm going to be cutting that back a lot. I'm not going to use this tall section at all. And I know a lot of these parts I'm just going to be cutting down lower, like this one right here. I'm going to use it to wire into shape, and I know at some point I'm going to be cutting that back quite a bit. Now I know this is kind of an odd thing for styling as far as using a lot of these thinner branches all from one place. Makes it kind of hard to make what feels like a traditional tree design. That is part of the fun challenge with this, really. Trying to figure out how to get the most out of this thing. Now I know with as many new shoots as are coming out of all parts of the trunk here, that this tree is strong enough to create a lot of more new shoots beyond this. So what I'm saying is, if I cut back a lot, I expect to see a lot of regrowth to replace that. Some of these thicker sections are very green at the end, so I'm actually only cutting those back kind of roughly, and then I'll come back at another time and prune those a little bit better. It'll naturally die back. The dieback won't go into these thinner pieces quite as much, so that'll be good for it. Now, dogwoods like these tend to have a lot of sprouts coming out from cut areas, as you can see on the trunk down there below that I removed so many of. Now at the ends of these branches that I've cut, they've also come out with usually a minimum of 2 new shoots near that cut. The dormant buds wake up and then they just go to town and start replacing foliage there. In this spot I had about 6 shoots coming out from just this trimmed piece right here. So I'm kind of reducing that quite a bit. It is a good problem to have. You know, I have tons of selections to make on this to determine where the branches are going to be oriented. Since they often come out in a radial pattern around the cut or at the ends of branches, wherever they make new growth. That makes it where I really have a lot of choices of which direction it's going to go without even wiring. I can do a lot of this just by clip and grow techniques. Usually more natural looking because it doesn't have the extra oomph that often gets added when we use wire. Now wire is nice because you can follow the feel of the rest of the tree by putting in your own bends. But also, especially as a person who enjoys making art, making shapes, you could really get carried away with wiring really quick and actually put in way more shapes than you need to match the character of the rest of the tree. That was funny. I've heard people or seen comments from people that, you know, Jared, as much as you spin your trees around, you really should have a turntable for doing this. Well, I kind of do. I got a table. I'm turning it. Seems to work pretty good for most of what I do. There is no actual turntable underneath this. So I guess you could say I got this turntable for free. So this part that I'm doing can be a little bit boring if you're just watching and expecting something really amazing to happen right away. Here's one difference between styling with deciduous material compared to evergreens and things like that, is that deciduous material just takes time. It's a waiting game to set up your material the way that you think is going to work for it, and then just wait to see if what you did is going to work. There's much less wiring and other there's much less wiring and other sorts of shaping going on with this sort of material compared to those evergreens. I actually like that process. I like to see the tree go through its phases. I grow with the tree as it's going, so that's fun for me to learn as I go also and work on more material. There is no such thing as an instant bonsai for deciduous material. They don't work like that. This dogwood is no exception to that. This is not going to be an instant bonsai. This is just going to have kind of a general idea of where the branch structure is going to come from to start with. And that is only just a start. As this grows and fills in, it's going to come up with new shoots in different places. I'm going to decide which of those shoots I'm going to use from where. And then just keep going at it little bit by little bit. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not air layering on this plant here, it's because it would be very difficult to air layer any of these parts within this, just mess of shoots coming out. So just because I can air layer doesn't mean I'm, really need to. There's not really a whole lot on this tree that I would consider for air layering. These are mostly just straight twigs. And then there comes the cuttings. You could easily take cuttings from this. That doesn't mean I'm going to just because I can. I have a lot of trees to maintain. And this one I got for the base. I actually rescued it just to rescue it. And I saved the parts that I really wanted to work with the most. Makes it where I'm not using up my energy on things that I don't really need that much. So that's what I'm saying. It's personal preference if you decide to air layer or do cuttings. It is not actually a requirement of bonsai practice to air layer or otherwise propagate trees using any of the fancy techniques, including grafting. So yeah, just because a tree is capable of growing with certain techniques doesn't mean you have to use them. Getting quite simplified in here. I'm up to the top section, and I had originally said that I was going to cut this top section off. I still am, because there's really nothing growing from that top section. There it goes, got that part off. This is why I wouldn't bother air layering this. It's just a stick. This is the same stick as could be on any other tree, and this particular part of the stick is not that strong. I mean, it would probably air layer just fine, then I would have this plain old stick with roots on it. So I would much rather have something like this base with a lot of character going on that I can really build on. So that's why I didn't air layer that. Because it is just a stick, and also because super difficult to get into this little tight spot there. I'll just clean up this little area here just a little bit. That way the hollowing and whatnot can start. If I have all this extra wood up here, it's just going to look weird for a while. Alright, time for me to go check on dinner. Alright, dinner was good, and I'm ready to do a little work again now that it's raining. I have a little bit less light out here than I'd like to have, but hey, that's how spring is around here. It's really nice and calming here in the greenhouse with that rain falling on the roof. Wiring time and possibly guy wire pretty soon here. Sometimes I'll leave a long stub on a branch if I feel like I'm going to pull it, such as this branch right here has this 2-inch section at the end of the branch here beyond the foliage, and I can use that as leverage if I wanted to pull that part strongly down. And let's see, I do have a nice attachment point right here, but also if I pull that down, it's pulling it back up on this other side. I'm not really sure if that's really worth it. Yeah, I don't know if it's worth it in that direction. Might be worth it back here in this other way so I can spread it out a little bit more to the side here. In order to do that, I think I need a better attachment point. And this right here, not super strong. I'm gonna go ahead and add another piece of bamboo just for this. Okay, now that's good and strong. I'm gonna go ahead and try it. I'm gonna take a guy wire from this and go outside of that one there. I'm also gonna wire some of these branches, and I'm actually only gonna leave 2 of these here up at the top. I'm gonna take the 2 strongest ones and use those. Okay, so I'm not super concerned with wires biting into this right this second. I know I got a lot of growing to do on this tree here. So if the wire cuts in, it'll be fine, because if it grows like other dogwoods I've had, it'll actually thicken up really quick and I won't see the wire scarring within a couple of years anyways. So I'm fully planning on leaving these on plenty long enough to create some wire scarring. Not because I like it, but because I know that that's roughly how long it's going to take to set these branches in place, and they'll grow thick during that time, and that's why the wire scarring will happen. So if I was doing this on a plant that I wanted to show or just look nice pretty soon, I actually would do a little bit looser wire, and then as I twist it, it would be just a little bit tighter. That would allow me a little bit of control over the tightness of the wire by starting it loose and tightening it to taste. Okay, I got one side started, and this is pretty securely tied down, but I also noticed that it's pulling the whole thing over. So I'm also going to secure this side the opposite direction by pulling this one against this other side. I haven't tightened the other guy wire on the other side very much yet because I wouldn't really be pulling the branch, I'd be pulling the entire trunk. And that's not the effect I'm going after. So as I said, I was doing that extra work on the rootage down there with these bamboo sticks in order to really secure this in place as much as I can. And I am doing a little bit extra by adding these guy wires on both sides to continue to secure it in place. When wiring, securing the tree in place is it just makes so much sense. It is actually very important. So I have noticed that it's not for everyone. Not everyone decides that they want to wire their trees this much. But I can tell you that if you're really manipulating a tree around, this just, I don't see how you can do it without securing the tree. And this side I'm not really pulling the branch down because it's way too thick. I'm just making an attachment so it'll stay in place. Sun is starting to come out outside a little bit. Maybe you can even see a little bit of sunlight here on this trunk being highlighted. Kind of passes through the trees near me and makes a nice little play of shadow and light. It's actually a really favorite time of mine is this time in the evening when I don't have to worry about any work stuff or a whole lot of other stuff going on. It's just a nice time to be. Alright, so now that is pretty secure the other direction, so when I pull this side, we'll see if I can get that to move a little bit. I'm going pretty gently because the way this growth works here, in this little nook, the bark is kind of piled up and it's kind of pointing up a little bit in here. And that is an easy place to see where the weak point is. This is actually where the branch is trying to fuse with the trunk. And it's not really super strong there still. And I know that if I go too much, this little spot is actually exactly where there's going to be a break. And that could be okay. I could actually use that and bend it down a little bit further, but I am still being careful with it. Okay, I don't want to go too much more than that because I can see the stress that's already happening there. There could still be a break just by it being here. There's not going to be a whole lot of tension on this wire beyond this point. And again, I'm just using that stub at the end as an attachment point for the wire. And what that'll allow me to do is not create a whole lot of wire scarring on this thick trunk from this part, this branch. Will not get so much wire scarring from that guy wire because it is pulling pretty strongly against it. Okay, so I got that one in there. Guy wire on the other side for security. See if I want to try to guy wire anything else down or back. See if this one wants to go back. This one actually does interest me to get it to go back. It's going to be a tricky one. I'm going to try to pull all the way back in here to this one from here. And I'll see if I can get a branch trunk kind of over that just a little bit. I don't want it completely off to the side. I don't mind if it sticks just kind of up a little bit. It's kind of an interesting little section on here that has some dead parts. Okay, see how this goes by pulling this. Might not get much out of this one. Normally I would try to assist by pulling this, but man, this is a tough spot. Come back a little bit, just a little bit. I'm trying to give these other branches just a little bit of space there, so I'll continue pulling that for a little bit more if it lets me. And it is moving pretty well. Okay, that's plenty. There's some serious bending on a deciduous. It didn't look like it moved very much, but that takes just a lot of force on these deciduous thick branches like this dogwood has. Okay, next for wiring some of these branches. I left a little bit extra on here because I wasn't sure what I was going to use. Now that I have it pulled into position, I'm just going to mainly trim this tall one back quite a bit. See, I don't need 4 shoots coming out of that same one, so a couple of those went away. And I'm actually not going to wire that one very much at all. I actually only need one little wire on there. Right now I am mainly setting wires on the branches. I haven't started really bending the branches that I placed wire wrapped around them yet. I'll get most of them wired up and then I'll be able to bend them into place. I could do all of this wiring with guy wires if I felt like it too, but I have plenty of guy wires on here, and some of these branches are just so tiny. It doesn't make a lot of sense to use an entire guy wire for a lot of these. Securing the wire on some of these is very tricky. We'll have to watch the wiring pretty closely on those ones. So for dogwood, like a lot of other deciduous trees, I look for where the next leaves are going to come out. And invariably, I'll bend it thinking that they're going to come out in a certain position, and they decide to do it somewhere else. So I just plan for the best and then use the best when it comes out. It's not always in the place that I think it's going to be, but just make it work. Okay, that's it. Doesn't look like a whole lot from right now, but it is just basically spread out. Some of the branches are much longer than they're going to be, and that's just to place them in a position and give them some growth. This will be something that I can update here in a month or so. Thanks for watching. Here's an update on this little hornbeam that I did an ASMR video on. Don't watch the ASMR video, it's not very good. But if you want to, I'll put the link to it on there and you can watch it. So this is a little Korean hornbeam that my wife and I have had for a long time. And it's just an update to show you some spring growth on it. New pot that it's got. It's a Bonsai Seeker is the name of the artist that does these pots. I found them on Facebook, and they are an American artist of bonsai pots. So, pretty nice, eh? There's your update.